This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Darryl Parks On Demand.
Legal advice to Jerry Sandusky this morning on the sacred 50,000 watts. Shut up! Stop! Look, I have never showered with my kid. Never. What is he thinking? Stop, Jerry, for goodness sakes. Stop. Well, how about this? All our troubles are now gone in the city of Cincinnati. Oh! New council is sworn in, and within hours, all troubles are gone. The blind can now see. The deaf can now hear. The gimps no longer walk with a limp. The city of Cincinnati is no longer broke. How did they do that? How? I'll tell you how. They cut a deal with Convergys. And back in the early part of the decade, who was the guy that told you Convergys was going to screw Cincinnati? Who was he? Come on. You know who. That's right, Darryl Parks. I told you. I said they would never put 1,400 employees in downtown Cincinnati. It wasn't going to happen. And then what Convergys did was they moved all their employees from Norwood. So Norwood got screwed. And then the mayor of Norwood, my good friend Mayor Tom, got a call from, I believe it was the then governor, who told him, hey, take one for the team. Let those employees move out of Norwood because it's a win for Cincinnati. And then Convergys started hiring and putting people in the Philippines, putting people in northern Kentucky, putting people everywhere but where they promised to put people. So now all of a sudden Convergys is kicking in $14 million to help balance the city of Cincinnati's budget. It's amazing how that works out, isn't it? See, they're not giving the city any money. They're just not going to spend the money that they were promised from the city of Cincinnati. Which, as far as a budget goes, I mean, that's doing the job. So I did the quick math on this. They promised to have 1,400 employees in downtown Cincinnati. I'm just using an average salary of $80,000 a year. I don't know what the average salary is, but let's just use $80K. So you have 1,400 people making on average $80K apiece. The city of Cincinnati taxes people that work in the city of Cincinnati 2.1% in an income tax. So that works out to about $2.3 million annually into the city of Cincinnati. So now Convergys is planning on only having 500 employees in downtown Cincinnati in Atrium 1, that big office building that the city of Cincinnati taxpayers paid to redo. And now with only 500 employees and let's say an average of $80,000 apiece, that works out to about $800,000 in taxes. Yes, hallelujah. Hallelujah. How does that almost one-party city council and of course the city manager and the mayor who can't be found with a search warrant, who's with his friends in China? How did they do it in a matter of hours? It's amazing to me. That's the first miracle of all miracles. And then also this week, Chiquita moves out of Cincinnati. And here I'm going to put the cheese, using Union Brother Willie's phrase, I'm going to put the cheese on the cracker on this one. Chiquita bills annually like $5 billion. I mean, that's their revenues. Some serious coin. Big dollars. So the state and the city of Cincinnati offered Chiquita a measly $6 million to stay. Peanuts. Nothing. $6 million to them is an accounting error. It's a rounding error. Trust me. So what happens? Charlotte offers them $20 million or so to come and move to Charlotte. That's still peanuts. It's nothing. So then we hear the state of Ohio offers Sears $400 million to move to Ohio, and specifically to the capital city of Columbus. They are talking about 6,000 jobs if Sears moves to Columbus. If is the big word here. If. Have you been into a Sears lately? No. Correct? Years ago, you go into Sears and you look for Kenmore appliances, which are made in Korea now. They're not made by Whirlpool anymore. They're not manufactured in the state of Ohio, nor anywhere in the Midwest. Korea. Recently, I was looking for appliances. Earlier part of this year, we were redoing our kitchen. It was difficult to find a refrigerator made in America. Hell, it was difficult to find a refrigerator made in North America. Finally settled on a refrigerator made in Mexico. I thought that was pretty close. You look at Kenmore appliances, Korea. They're not made in America anymore. Kenmore appliances are no longer the Whirlpool appliances of years past. So the other reason you go to Sears is Craftsman tools. All right, I use Craftsman tools. I have, in fact, some of my yard tools are Craftsman. Haven't bought a leaf blower in, 12 years, 13 years. So have you been into a Sears lately? No. Sears Holdings also owns Kmart. Have you been into a Kmart lately? If you haven't, go to the Kmart in the Anderson Town Center, which is truly the ghetto Kmart. It is, without question, the most depressing store I have been in my lifetime. Sad. Truly sad. Sears ain't moving here. If you do any research on brands that won't be around in a few years, one of the brands that tops the list is Sears and Kmart. Do a Google search on stories for brands that no longer will exist. If Sears, and the miracle of all miracles happens, if Sears moves to Columbus, they're going to be out of business in 10 years. That's fact. So what's going to happen? We're going to offer up $400 million that the state of Ohio can't afford, and Sears is going to go out of business. Columbus in Ohio is in the running with Austin, Texas, to land the corporate headquarters of Sears Holding. What Sears is looking for is airport access. Does Austin, Texas have a big airport? No. Austin's, smaller than Cincinnati, I believe. Never been there. But Austin does not have the size of an airport of, Port Columbus. And, of course, they don't have the size of the airport of O'Hare or even Midway. Sears isn't going anywhere. Good Lord. So we have that. We have Chiquita bailing on Cincinnati for pennies. And then we have Hamilton County, the insolvent Hamilton County, that if I knew they were looking at a fire sale to sell Drake Hospital for literally pennies. It's 107 acres. If you've flown into CVG and you're landing to the south, you fly right over it. It's a huge area of land. They sold it for pennies. Backroom deal. So let me take you behind closed doors in the backroom deal. This is how it went down. So you have the two county commissioners that want to cut this deal sitting there. And you have the reps from University Hospital. And University Hospital, those people say, how much do you need? Oh, we need $14.2 million. We'll be good guys about this. We're just going to round it up to $15 million. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You've solved our problem for 12 months. But what are you going to do in the next year? We'll sell off something else for pennies on the dollar in 12 months. You see, in 12 months, they're going to be upside down by double the 14, close to $28 million. And then the year after that, it's going to be $56 million. And then the year after that, it's going to double again. They didn't do anything. Nothing. Zilch. Kick the can down the street, just like the city council did in Cincinnati. And then the big one, the National Defense Authorization Act. Today I'm going to put on my barrister hat because those we elected to go and represent us in Washington who fail to ever read the Constitution have violated the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth, and the 14th. I shall explain. But just watch what you say, because if Obama signs this one into law, you don't have to worry about the local po-po or Simon Lease coming to get you. Just watch out for the Army Jeep Humvee coming down your street to pick you up and throw you in the hoosgow and forget about you. That's what happened this week. Kind of a quiet week, wouldn't you say? Yeah. I'm Darryl Parks, 700 WLW. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast from meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer. Today, sunny and mild, or not a bad day, high near 60. For tonight, increasing cloudiness down to 40. Tomorrow, some light rain much of the day, and well into Monday. Tomorrow's high is going to be 54, and then as we head back to work with Jim Scott, heavy rain on Monday with a high at 54. Sunny skies and 40. And the big one, 700 WLW. And speaking about Monday, and also on Tuesday, I'll be filling in for Doc Thompson on those 2 days in the midday show there at 9:06 on Monday and on Tuesday. So the Fifth and Sixth Amendment, also the 14th Amendment, all voted against by the Senate this past week. A couple of months ago, the House did it, and it's all part of the National Defense Authorization Act. So what does this mean? You know, when you look at the so-called Arab Spring, you look at the so-called elitist ruling class that we have in our country, which I have talked about. The group of people that are allowed to inside trade and make themselves millionaires on their $170,000 a year salary. You know, those poor individuals that have to maintain two households. You know, when they start that pity party. I have to maintain two households, and I only make $170,000 a year. And then after a couple of terms in office, they're multimillionaires. Well, these individuals, I think maybe, and I'm being an extremist on this, but are they preparing for riots in the streets? 2008, we came really close to just totally tubing the economy because of their malfeasance. Because of them and their sweetheart deals with Wall Street and the banking industry. and the rules that force the banking industry and really rewarded poor behavior of individuals to get into mortgages that they couldn't afford, and then Wall Street being culpable, selling insurance policies against these bad mortgages, which almost cratered the entire world economy. So now the world economy is on the edge again because of Europe. So you see the so-called Arab Spring. You see the governments being overthrown in various countries in the Middle East, and you see riots happening in Europe, and you see the whole Occupy movement here. And whether you agree with it or not, and whether you agree with their actions or not, I am one to believe that the Occupy movement has some basis in reality. They're just not verbalizing it correctly, and they're not going about protesting the right way. But people are generally PO'd. Would you agree with me on that? We have the ruling class, the elitist ruling class in Congress that protect themselves against all the laws that we're supposed to be following. And then you have the fat cats on Wall Street, and you have that group of people, and you have the rest of us, right? So are they preparing for riots in the streets here in America? It's a broad question, but are they? I mean, think about if people really get mad and start burning buildings, and the economy craters, and the unemployment rate goes up from the facetious 8.6% to, let's say, 15, 20%. Your bank accounts become vaporized, and things get really ugly. Really, really dark and bad. And all of a sudden, us regular middle-class people start blaming those that hold those $170,000 a year jobs on Capitol Hill. How are they to protect themselves? How? Well, you have the military, right? Sure. And if you're deemed seditious, or they don't like what you say, or you're all of a sudden a threat to them, or you're a threat to America, and all of a sudden America is considered the United States of America is considered a war zone, well, you could be thrown in jail. You could be denied your due process. You could be locked up until the armed conflict ends. Or just the conflict. But who is to determine when the conflict ends? And who is to determine what you have done seditious or a threat? It's just going to be deemed that way. And that's what the National Defense Authorization Act says in sections 1031 and 1032. This language was put in by John McCain and a few others. Yeah, that John McCain. Saw a picture of him this week with sunglasses on. Looked like he was part of the mafia. That's what's going on. That is what's going on. So if this bill is signed into law, was passed by the House, passed by the Senate this week, if it's signed into law, we have to ask ourselves, is it lawful for the president to order any American held indefinitely as a terrorist without formal charges? Because the Senate had the opportunity this week to uphold the United States Constitution, specifically the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments. And they decided to vote against the Constitution. Is that clear enough? That is what's going on. 513-749-7000 is our number. Brandy has the news, and we'll continue 700 WLW. One of the greatest events every year in the beginning of December is Rents Fest. It goes on today. I'll be there this afternoon about 4:30. Willie's going to be there, I believe, at around 4. Sega Claus there about 3:30. Let's be looking for the big one inflatable at the Duke Convention Center. Rents Fest going on today until about 6 o'clock in downtown Cincinnati. And the Reds always do such a great job at that. Always such a great job. Let's do a little constitutional education, so to speak, this morning, all right? The Fifth Amendment, part of the Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. In case you didn't know that. You didn't learn that at Cincinnati Public Schools. But the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution reads, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war, public danger, and it goes on from there. The Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution, also part of the Bill of Rights. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. All right? So, we move on to number 14. And what number 14 does, this was adopted in July of 1868. And this was one of the amendments during the Reconstruction phase of the country. And due process, which is the Fifth Amendment, speedy trial is number 6. And due process, this clause in the 14th Amendment, basically binds state and local governments to the Fifth Amendment. You following me? All right, so let me give you a list of individuals that we have elected to office in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. First of all, let's go back to May 26th of 2011. And the reason the National Defense Authorization Act in the House of Representatives never really hit the news, what was that weekend? Correct. Memorial Day weekend. All right, so let's see here. Who are the people that have never read the Constitution of the United States and have no idea what they are sworn to uphold? Let's go to Indiana first. I'm just going to use local Congress people. Mike Pence. Mike has never picked up the pocket Constitution and read it. In Kentucky, our good friend Jeff Davis. He voted for it. And let's go to Ohio. I'm sure Gene Schmidt never would vote. Yeah, Gene Schmidt voted for it. Michael Turner voted for it. Steve Shabbat, he voted for it. He voted against the number 5 and number 6 and number 14 amendments. And let's go to the National Defense Authorization Act, Senate Bill 1867, which was voted on Thursday. At what time? 8 o'clock at night, when no one was paying attention, of course. Let's see here. Mitch McConnell would have read the Constitution. No. Mitch McConnell voted for it. In Indiana, Dan Coates and Richard Lugar both voted for it. And in the state of Ohio, Rob Portman obviously has never read the Constitution, nor has Sherrod Brown. Final vote in the Senate was 93 for, 7 against. Yes, our good friend in Kentucky, Rand Paul, did vote nay. Normally I get on the Saturday show and I joke around. This is sad. This is truly sad. The bill is not law yet. The White House says it's going to veto it. That remains to be seen, of course. Your rights were stripped away to due process. Your rights were stripped away to a speedy trial. Martial law quickly could be put upon the United States of America. You know, I sound like I'm a nut job, like some ultra right wing talk show host. And if you've listened to me over the years, I'm pretty moderate. Fiscally, I'm pretty conservative. These individuals simply voted against you. They voted against you. And I wish I were kidding. I truly do. I wish I were kidding by saying they aren't really preparing for riots in the streets. You see, the economy is horrible. If Europe comes crashing, and this past week, stock market goes up 500 points, happy days are here again. They just kicked the can down the street. That's all they did. And the risk of Europe going under is only days away again. They just got our mind off it for a few days. So how are those elected going to protect themselves? When your bank account is vaporized, your 401k goes away, and people start protesting. And protesting is a very kind word. If you think it can't happen in America, I've used this example before. Society will come unraveled in a matter of hours. We've seen it happen just a few years ago in New Orleans. 18 in front of 10, 700 WLW. 700 WLW last night in college basketball. The Bearcats winners over Georgia 57-51 today. Xavier takes on Purdue, 3 o'clock at the Cintas Center. Hear that game on 55 KRC. ESPN 1530 has the Kentucky and North Carolina game. That's a hot ticket in Lexington, man. That's at noon today. And here on the big one, UC takes on Connecticut in football as UC tries to get their share of the Big East title. Our coverage starts at 11:33 this morning on the big one. And tomorrow, biggest game in the NFL, the Bengals take on the Steelers. Our coverage starts with Ken Brew and Sunday Morning Sports Talk at 9:06 tomorrow morning. I'm Darryl Parks. 513-749-7000 is the number here into the bunker that we have barricaded today. Let's head to Lexington. Ron, you're on the big one.
Hey, Darryl.
How you doing, Ron?
Thanks for bringing up this issue. This is a very serious thing that's going on. I've been watching it on C-SPAN, and you're the only person that's actually been bringing this to the public. This is a very serious issue that the people need to know about this.
Yeah, Ron, I'm not. If you've listened to me at for any length, I'm not an alarmist. I'll say things that are extreme just for reaction sometime. Yeah. But this is here's a quote from Senator Lindsey Graham, who's from South Carolina, who's a Republican. He said, if you're an American, this is a quote, if you're an American citizen and you betray your country, you're going to be held in military custody and you're going to be questioned about what you know, and you're not going to be given a lawyer if our national security interests dictate that you are not to be given a lawyer, end quote.
Darryl, I've been studying this for 11 years. I'm writing a book on a situation that happened during the Civil War. Now, I find it very ironic that this is called Senate Bill 1867 because the Supreme Court issued Ex parte Milligan, and that was in 1866. And what the Supreme Court said was that we made a mistake during the Civil War. What we did was we were detaining people who were innocent civilians, some of them loyal to the Union, not granting them trials. People forget that that was a political war. Yes, it was against slavery. I mean, it was about slavery. It was about preserving the Union. But it was also a political war. And Democrats were being detained simply because they were Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And this can happen again. That's the danger of this bill. What the Supreme Court ruled was that when the civil courts are open, use them. Military tribunals can be abused by personal political powers.
You know what this bill also does?
Tell me.
Since we're talking about prisons, the bill also bars the use of any funds authorized for the Pentagon to shut down Guantanamo Bay.
Okay.
It's also in there.
I understand we have to be practical about this different terrorist war that we have, but we have to be very, very careful about losing our personal liberties here.
I cannot understand how these are not dumb people that are in Congress, whether it be the House of Representatives or in the Senate. Would you agree with me on that?
I'm not so sure.
It's not a facetious question. It's true. These are not dumb people. How they could just simply look at the Constitution and not understand it.
Yeah.
And they just overwhelm. You know, if this were 51-49 in the Senate, all right. Yeah, all right. You know, this was 93-7.
Do you know that it's been estimated that there were around 30,000 civilians during the Civil War? That was a civil war. We do not have a civil war.
Well, what they're saying, though, is because of terrorist threats, that the United States of America is now a war zone. Now, I would say that on September 12th of 2001, I probably would have agreed to that.
But this is giving executive authority to
yes.
this decision, and that's giving it to one person.
To the president.
To the president. And we have a balanced system written in the Constitution, and if we violate that,
mm-hmm.
what we have is a potential autocrat, or even worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, here you have here it is. It's sections 1031 and 1032 of this bill. First of all, it authorizes the federal government to indefinitely imprison without charge or trial American citizens or others picked up inside or outside the United States. Number two, it mandates military detention of civilians who would otherwise be outside of military control, including civilians picked up within the United States.
Right.
And number three, it transfers to the Department of Defense prosecutorial, investigative, and law enforcement.
Right.
And it takes it away from, whether it be the FBI or the local sheriff or the local the police department.
Well, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter.
No.
You have to be very careful in protecting your rights, because if one party gets into power, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, they could start arresting people, calling them terrorists, because they're saying bad things about their party.
This is exactly what it is.
That's what happened during the Civil War. We've already learned. We've been there. People were arrested in the North, in Wisconsin, for talking bad about Lincoln at a bar.
Yeah. Well, here I mentioned the vote in the Senate was 93-7 in May on the weekend of Memorial Day. So no one was paying attention. The vote in the House was 322-96. 7 in front of 10. I'm Darryl Parks on the big one. 700 WL. The Reds Fest tonight. Head over to Anderson, the Anderson Town Center, home of the Ghetto Kmart. This place ain't ghetto. Latitudes. One of the great blues artists in the tri-state area, a lady named Natalie Wells, is going to be performing over at Latitudes, Anderson Town Center, in the shadow of the Ghetto Kmart. And she'll start performing about 9:30 tonight. I may be there. She's awesome. Awesome. All right, about 3 before 10 o'clock, lines are packed and stacked, as Segman would say. Martin, how are you?
Good, Darryl. Hey, I tell you, it's very scary what you're talking about.
Damn right.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if we, okay, let's say the federal government has information that maybe local sheriffs don't have, and if everything is busting loose and going crazy, it might be a good idea to be able to intercept and kind of defuse the situation before it really, gets out of control. Now, I agree with what you're saying about the whole thing being
unconstitutional. So you're endorsing detention camps?
Well, I mean, technically, I'm a big fan of law and order, and I would rather.
So you don't want anybody rioting on Martin Street in Eaton?
Well, nothing good comes of riots. There's a book. It's called The Crowd by Gustav Le Bon, and it talks about how when people are in crowds,
so Martin.
Yeah.
So if let's say you are particularly emotional about some subject and you speak out about it, and let's say. Who's your congressman? Boehner?
Well, I'd be Congressman Boehner.
All right. So let's say the Weeper doesn't like what you say, and he says, "Hey, go get him." And he calls up the president, and hey, Mr. President, there's this guy Martin in Eaton. I don't really like what he's saying, so go pick him up.
Yep.
And then the Humvee comes rolling down your street in Eaton, and they pick you up and throw you in Gitmo. You're okay with that?
Well, no. See, at that point, I've lost faith in the federal government.
Well, but it's too late at that point.
Well, I know, but
it's too late.
Right now, though, I have faith in the federal government. I understand that they're acting in a misguided.
Martin, it's too late at that point, Martin. It's too late. Oh, good Lord. We'll continue. News time here on the home of the best Bengals coverage, 700 WL.